and this is just a quick video to help you with making some graphs in Excel for the technical assignment. I realized that some of you had problems with this in the previous assignment, so this is just to help you out a little bit. Although I will say that I expect all of you to be able to acquire this information on your own. Being able to figure out how to do something by yourself is one of the greatest skills that you should acquire in college. And certainly a Google search for how to make charts or graphs in Excel will provide you with a plethora of information. But in an effort to make this as easy for you as possible, here is a brief introduction. So this is the Excel file that you will download from Blackboard. It has data for the state of Kansas on oil and natural gas production for the years 1970 to 2006. So you can see that here in column A, you have the decimal year. So decimal year is just the year. Here you can see 1970, this 0.083 indicates that it's the first month, January, second month, third month, and so on until you have the 12th month here, December, and then on to 1972. Oh, sorry, I skipped a year there, but you can see, so it's just each year divided into 12 months that give a decimal. So this is going to be your time column here. So that is the x-axis, the independent variable, because we want to see how these other variables change over time. So here we have oil production in millions of barrels. We have the number of oil wells at any given month. And so all of these observations there's one observation for each month. So oil in millions of barrels, number of oil wells, production per well, and then we have natural gas, and this is millions of cubic feet, the number of gas wells, and the production per well. So in the assignment, you are asked to create a series of graphs and then compare them to each other, answer some questions, produce an analysis of your results. So an analysis of these visualizations, explaining, talking about natural gas and oil production in Kansas. So I will show you just the basics of how to do this. So for the first graph, you are asked to plot how oil in millions of barrels over a time period 1970 to 1974. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to highlight our data. So for the x-axis, we want 1970 through 1974. And so this 1975 is actually going to be, is that? Yeah, the last, this is December of 1974. So you have your years highlighted, and then you will hold down Command on a Mac or Control on a PC and highlight oil in millions of barrels to the same place. All right, so we have, this is our X column, this is our Y column. Now we will come up here to Insert Charts. We want this XY chart because we have an X-axis and a Y-axis. We are going to choose this Scatter, Scatter with straight lines. And here is our chart. So we see how our oil production is changing between 1970 and 1974. So you can see this is just all of 1974 right here. So this is a basic visualization of your data, but hopefully what you can recognize is that it is not a very good graph. Excel calls them charts. I call them graphs, or actually plots. But first, we need an informative title. So you can just click on this here, and then you're able to change this text. So you want something very specific. So we have oil in millions of barrels. Actually, we'll say oil production. Oil production in millions of barrels. And then we need to label our x-axis. So you can come here to add chart element. We've got an axis title. So horizontal. Year. And vertical. And so this is oil in millions of barrels. And so really, since we're giving the unit here, which is millions of barrels, we don't need it here. But actually what we do need to say is in Kansas. One thing when you're making graphs like this is you should always think about if you printed this out, only this graph, and you lost it as you were walking down the street, and somebody found it, so they had no idea where it came from, they had no idea of the context or who you were, they should be able to correctly interpret your graph. The same goes for maps if you're into GIS. They should be able to correctly interpret it just from this piece of paper with no other explanation. And that means that you need proper labels. All right, so we have our proper labels, but there's a lot of empty space. And this really doesn't do anything towards increasing one's understanding of what's happening. So let's change our axes. You can see that there's room here for 69 to 70. We don't have data there, and we don't have data from 75 to 76. So if you highlight your x-axis, this year axis, you can double click there and it will open this formatting pane. So you want to make sure and click this kind of chart graphic there. And so now you can see your bounds, the minimum and the maximum. So we'll change the maximum to 1970. And, the minimum to 1970 and the maximum to 1975. So you can see that looks a lot better there. All right. So now we still have all of this blank space here. So you can just highlight your y-axis and change those. So you can see that maybe a minimum of 4 would be appropriate. Or even 4.5 if you want. There we go. That looks a lot better. Now you can clearly see this change through time for oil production in Kansas. And so you are asked to make a series of graphs. You're going to do them all like this. You don't want to combine any of the graphs because it's important here that in one graph, in one chart, you don't want different values on the y-axis or the x-axis. So I think the second graph that you're asked to make is then natural gas production. And so it might be tempting to put them on the same graph, except they're going to have different scales here. If both of them were in millions of barrels, that would be one thing, but our natural gas production is in millions of cubic feet. So you don't want to combine them on the same plot. So you'll make a second graph, and then you'll be able to compare the two. You're asked to do this for a longer time series, so the entire time series. So this will go from 1970 to 2006. So each one is going to be its own graph. You need to properly label all of them. It's nice sometimes to change the colors too, so you can just highlight your data series and then change that color here. There's a lot of different things that you can do. This is just some basic stuff to help you out. You'll want to include all of those graphs in your write-up. So you should be able to just copy and paste them into a Word document if you want. You can also save them as a picture and insert them into any kind of document that way. I should also say if there's a different statistical package that you use or data visualization software that you want to use, that's perfectly acceptable. I'm an R user myself, just as long as you have the correct and relevant plots in your document. So if you have questions, post them on the discussion board or feel free to email, or as always, come to my office hours. I'm sitting there waiting for you. Bye.